Hi guys, welcome back. Now there are so many reasons why people get into debt in the first place. Whether it is to fund those major purchases like buying a car or buying your first home, to things like funding your education where you get your student loans, or to start a business, and sometimes even for emergencies. There are so many reasons why we get into debt. Now for most people, when you get that debt approved and it sorts out the thing you wanted to sort out, that can be one of the happiest moments in your life. But the reality is, soon after that, the debt becomes a source of financial stress and mental instability because of high interest rates, late fees, hidden terms and conditions, and all sorts of things that come with debt. So it's important to know that while debt is an important tool in getting you to where you need to be, it also comes with all these risks. So it's important for anyone who gets into debt to understand the terms of the debt, budget effectively for repayments, and be mindful of their financial well-being. But that being said, understanding how to align your budget towards dealing with this debt is very important in your financial well-being because debt must be paid. It is a financial and legal obligation. So falling behind has major ramifications in terms of the interest that you pay, and completely defaulting can lose you your house, your business, or any other assets that you may have put as security. Now, of course, we don't want that. So today I'm going to show you how you can incorporate paying your debt earlier and faster into your budget so that you can avoid those huge interest rates, late fees, and things associated with poor debt management. So let's get into it. But before we get into it, I want you to understand what paying debt fast means. So paying debt fast is simply about balancing your short-term cash needs with your long-term cash needs. Now let me explain. So the main benefit of paying debt fast is your reduced interest payments. So here's what I mean. If you keep paying the minimum amount every single month, you will eventually pay off the debt at some point, and in the short term, paying the minimum payments is going to help you have cash to spend now because it's going to reduce the strain on your immediate cash flows and allow you to have more money now to spend and do with whatever you want. However, the downside with only paying the minimum payments is that at the end of the long term, when you finally pay this debt off, you would have paid the principal amount and a huge chunk of interest. And in some countries, the interest rates are so high that you end up paying double what you borrowed. When you look at the debt from a broader perspective, at the end of the term, and you look at how much interest you've paid, it's a huge amount of interest. In the short term, in the day-to-day, month on month, you don't really feel those interest payments because they're spread over the term of the loan. So you don't really feel them. But at the end of the long term, you do realize that you've paid a lot of interest. When you set out to pay debt fast, on the other hand, you sacrifice money that you could have had now to do with whatever you want, because what that means is that on top of the minimum payments that you're making every single month, you're making additional payments over and beyond your legal obligation so that you can pay it back faster. So what that means is that you're sacrificing short-term liquidity now. Basically, you're putting a bit of a financial strain on yourself in terms of your cash flow. So you have less money now to spend and do whatever you want. However, you end up saving a lot of money on interest payments in the long run. Because when you pay that debt before the long term ends, you're going to save a huge chunk of interest, and which will save you significant amounts of money. And what that means is, whereas you suffered in the short term, the moment you get that debt paid off, now you will have more money left over every month to be able to do whatever you want because you paid off the debt faster, and you would have saved a lot of money on the interest. So the benefits are huge. But I wanted you guys to understand that balance before we dive in, because it's about balancing short-term needs and liquidity with long-term needs and liquidity. There's a trade-off. Both sides have benefits. So I wanted you guys to understand this trade-off so that we go into this discussion with an informed point of view. Now the good news is debt overpayments or paying more than your minimum amount is not a must. It's not in your debt contract and you don't have to do it, except for the benefits that we mentioned earlier. And remember, you decide how much you want to pay over and above the minimum. It's your decision. So what that means is, in a month where things are good, you can pay more towards your debt, and months where things are not that good, you can pay less or revert back to just paying the minimum. So it's really up to you. So now that that's out of the way, let's get into the video. I personally am a fan of paying debt faster. Now there are so many methods or strategies to pay debt faster, but in this video I'm going to cover the debt avalanche. So let's get into it. Now the debt avalanche is a strategy that prioritizes paying off debts with the highest interest fast. It focuses on minimizing the overall interest that is paid over the life of all debts. Here's how it works. Number one, you're going to want to list out all your debts. Make a list of all your debts, including the outstanding balance and the corresponding interest rates. Number two is order them by interest rates. So you're going to want to arrange your debts in descending order from the one with the highest interest rate. So basically the one with the highest interest rate first, and then the next going downwards all the way to the one with the lowest interest rate. Now, if you haven't watched my previous videos on budgeting, please go and watch those, because that's when this budget will make sense. Pause now, go and watch that video, and you'll be able to follow along much more easily. So in this example, in the core living expenses, we have debt. So I've highlighted them a different color here. We have listed out all our debts. Now I've not put the outstanding balances. So we have a car loan, we have a student loan, and a mortgage. I have ordered them in descending order in terms of interest rate. So the number you see in the brackets is the interest rate. So for the car loan is 17%, student loan has an interest rate of 10%, and the mortgage has an interest rate of 5%. So that would mean that the car loan has the highest interest, so that's the one that's up here. Student loan has the second highest, which is 10%, and then the mortgage has the lowest. So we've covered steps 1 and 2. So the next step is to list out the minimum payments for each of the debts. So that minimum payment that you're legally obliged to make every single month. So again, what that looks like is here. So for the car loan, the minimum payments every month is $450. The student loan, the minimum payment every month is $300, and then for the mortgage, the minimum payment every month is $500. Now, of course, a mortgage is a bigger balloon debt, so obviously, even with the lower interest rate, it will have higher minimum payments. So now what we're going to do is, now that we know what our minimum payments are, and we'll put them in the budget. So step number 3 is continuing to make all these minimum payments on all the debts. And the reason we're doing that is so that we can keep up to date with all the debts and avoid any late fees. And also remember, it's a legal obligation to make those minimum payments. So that's why we have them in the budget and we're keeping them there. And that's step number 3. So step number 4 is to allocate any extra funds to the highest interest debt. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go into our budget and first of all understand, do we have any extra funds that we can allocate to the highest interest debt first? And if we don't have any extra funds, how can we realign our budget to be able to create some surplus to allocate towards that? So in a situation where you don't have any extra money, the ways you can be able to create extra money is, number 1, by realigning your budget and reallocating money here and there to create some extra money. Number 2 is earning more income. You can go out there, create a side hustle and earn more income. Remember, there is no limit to how much money you can earn, but of course there's a limit to how much you can reallocate the money. So obviously the earning more income approach is a much better one. So let's dive into our budget and see how we can do that. So at the moment with our budget, in this example, we have £270 left to spend. Remember, step number 4 is allocating the extra funds to the highest interest debt first. We're going to create an extra expense line in our future expenditure column, which we're going to call extra debt payments. Now, the reason why I've put in the future you expenditure column is because this is not a legal obligation. This is you deciding to take charge of your debt and your financial future and pay this debt first. I'm going to go into the future expenditure column. I'm going to create extra debt payments. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to allocate all of the surplus we have in our budget to the highest interest debt. Our surplus at the moment is 270, so this is how much we have left to spend after spending on everything else. Now what we're going to do is we're going to simply come here and put that exact amount here, and we're going to label that car loan. So what that means is that every single month, we're not only going to make the minimum payment on the car loan, which is £450, we're also going to add an extra payment of £270 towards the car loan every single month. And that is step number 5. So you take the extra amount that you've been able to get from your budget and allocate it fully or wholly to the highest interest debt. And that's simply it. The next step is just simply repeating the process every single month. So every single month, anytime that you have a surplus, you're going to allocate it fully to the highest interest debt along with the minimum payment, and do that every single month until the debt is paid off. So every single month you're going to pay the $450 to the car loan and pay $270 every single month on top of the $450 to the car loan. Now obviously the $450 will be taken as a direct debit by the bank because they take their payments automatically, or your lender. But the $270, what we're going to do, and this is a pro tip, if the surplus that you've created from your budget is something you're confident you can create every single month, so in this case you're confident that every single month you have £270 extra left over, then what you can do is create a standing order to take out this money every single month and pay towards your loan. However, if it's not something you're confident that you have every single month, then you're better off doing this manually. So for example, in this situation, just manually go into your bank account and just transfer over that $270 to your loan account. So that's what you're going to do every single month. until the debt is paid off. So when you manage to pay off the high interest debt fast, the first one, this is how you deal with the next highest debt. So when the car loan debt is finished, this is what we're going to do. We no longer have to make these minimum payments of $450, so we're going to delete those from our budget. Now here is where the magic happens. The minimum payment that you used to make to the car loan, this is what you're going to notice. It's now going to become the leftover amount at the end of the month. If you scroll to the right, to the analysis column, look at how much we have left. That's $450. So if you remember carefully, this $450 was what we were paying as a minimum amount to the car loan. Because we paid it off, now that's what's left in our budget as leftover, because we don't have to pay it anymore. So here's where the magic happens. This is what we're going to do. Now, the student loan has a minimum payment of $300. This is now the highest interest debt. We're going to leave the minimum payment in so that we can keep up with it. Then what we're going to do is this extra debt payment, now we're going to change it to student loan. We're now going to allocate all extra funds, all of them, to the next highest debt. Now the extra funds is not just the $270, it's also the $450. So what we're going to do is we're going to allocate the minimum payment that we had for the car loan, which was $450, to the student loan, and also the overpayments we were making in the previous months towards the car loan. We're also going to allocate those towards the student loan. Here's how it looks like. So we've changed this to student loan now, $270. So we're going to come here and say this is equals $270 plus the $450 minimum payment for the car loan that we are no longer paying. So we're getting the $270, which is the overpayment, the extra debt payments that we've been making towards the car loan, and we're adding the minimum payment to the car loan that we're no longer paying. So now we're making a total of £720 of extra debt payments towards the student's loan, and that is on top of the minimum payment that we're making for the student loan. So you see how the magic happens. That's why it's called an avalanche. Like when you pay off the first debt, the rest just start tumbling quickly and quickly and quickly. So now every single month we're making total debt payments towards the student loan of £1,020. That's massive, and that debt is going to go by quickly. So again, you repeat the process. So keep doing that until the student loan debt is done. Now when that one is done, you do the same for the mortgage. So all the extra payments that you've been making towards the student loan, which is the $720, because the student loan will be done, you get that $720, add it to the minimum payments that we were making for the student loan, because we're no longer paying it anymore, which will be $1,000, and that will become now your extra debt payment towards your mortgage every single month. Now I'm going to be quick with that one just to show you what that looks like. And that will be on top of your minimum payment towards your mortgage. So finally, here's what that will look like. And now, as you can see, the only debt we have left is the mortgage payment, which was the lowest interest debt. So we still have our minimum payments in there for the mortgage, which is £500. If we scroll to the right, the amount we have left over is £300. And if you remember, that was the minimum payment we used to make for the student loan. So again, we're going to repeat the process. What we're going to do is come to the left. In our future expenses category, we have changed this extra debt payments to mortgage. As you can see, we're adding the $270 we used to pay for the car loan. We have added the $450 that we were paying as a minimum payment to the car loan. Now we're also adding the £300 that we were paying as a minimum payment for the student loan to give us a total of $1,020 as extra debt payments that we're going to be making every single month towards your mortgage, on top of the minimum payment of £500 that you're making every single month to your mortgage. Now what that gives us is a total payment towards your mortgage every single month of £1,520. So every single month you're going to be making a minimum payment of $500 plus $1,020, totaling $1,520 towards your mortgage. Now trust me, that mortgage is going to go so fast. The bank only wants £500. What that means is that now you're paying it back at 3 times the rate. So you're going to pay this debt off 3 times faster than you would have if you were paying the minimum payment. And that's how you pay off debts quickly, and that's how you save a lot of interest in the process. Now before I leave you, throughout this video, we've been going through scenarios where you have some money left over every single month. Now I want to take you through a quick example of a situation where you don't have money left over every month, and how you can reallocate your budget to be able to find those overpayments to be able to make towards your debt. So let me show you quickly. As you can see, we have our debt, arrange them in order of the highest interest rate, and their minimum payments. Now if you scroll over to the right, in our analysis section, we are earning a total of £4,300. According to our budget, we are spending more than we are earning. So we are £130 in the reds. We have a deficit of £130. So now the challenge for us is to to be able to reallocate our budget. Number one, get out of our deficit and find a surplus to be able to make extra debt payments on our debt. This analysis section shows us that we are overspending on core living expenses because we have budgeted 50% of our income on core living expenses, but we're currently spending about 60%. So that's the importance of the analysis section. That gives you an area to start from. We go to our core living expenses. There are some areas where we can save some money or reallocate. Rent obviously is fixed, that's not changing. Utility bills, those depend on our usage, so we can control, but they will not significantly change, to be honest. Transport could change, but it won't really make a material impact. Kids' education, it is what it is. The minimum debt payments, those are things that we cannot change. Those are legal obligations. We can't reduce our minimum payments. So what that means is these core living expenses, there's nothing we can change here. So we go to the next category. If we look at enjoyment, for example, date night. If you and your partner agree that, you know what, we need to pay this debt off quickly, what you can either sacrifice date night totally or find ways of having more affordable debts so that you can also be able to pay your debts back quicker. So I'm going to take the assumption that both of you agree you want to pay the debt off quicker. We can reduce the debt night from 200 to about 100 pounds. You might be someone who is flexible and say, you know what? Instead of buying clothes every single month worth 200 pounds, let me reduce that so that I can pay my debts back faster. Instead, buy maybe cheaper clothes. Or instead of buying 10 outfits a month, I can buy, let's say, 2 or 3. So let's say clothing, we reduce that to, again, 100 pounds. On the right, as you can see, now we have a surplus of 70 pounds. Now we're getting somewhere. Things like drinks with the girls, you can reduce that. Let's say we chop that by another 50 pounds. Go out maybe only one weekend as opposed to all weekends. Now you have 120 pounds surplus. Now you may have noticed that most of the things that are reduced were in the enjoyments of fun category. The reason is because this enjoyments of fun category, these are things that you want or are nice to have, but you don't absolutely need them. So whenever you're looking for ways of chopping back and finding a surplus to allocate to your debt, that's the category you want to first attack. Because again, these are things you can live without. So as you can see, we've made up 120 pounds in here. And now we can repeat that process that we did earlier of allocating that 120 surplus to our highest interest debt first, along with its minimum payments, repeat, rinse and repeat until we pay all our debts off. So I just want to show you that, guys, that you can find ways of reallocating your budget if you don't necessarily have surpluses every single month. Now, key things to note about the debt avalanche. It requires discipline because remember, you're allocating to the higher interest rate debts first. You may not see progress on the lower interest rate ones as quickly as you're seeing with the higher interest ones. So that can be slightly demotivating because it will take time for the other ones to get paid. But trust me, when it catches momentum, the debts will keep falling like dominoes. Now also I have to mention there are other methods of clearing off debts, like the debt snowball, where you prioritize smaller debts first, so the ones with the smallest balances, pay those off first and then go on to the bigger ones in ascending order. If you're someone who likes that bit of motivation, that can be a better method for you because as you pay off the smaller debts, you get that momentum, you feel happy, and it gives you that motivation to keep going. Now I covered how to create and use a simple budget in my previous video, which I'm going to link up here. And you can watch this playlist over here for more videos on budgeting, like learning how to pay yourself fast and create an emergency fund, and more pro tips on budgeting.